In 1994, a German archaeologist climbed a hill in southern Turkey and found a stone older than farming. Older than writing. Older than the wheel. Older than every city, every empire, every temple humans have ever built. 11,500 years ago, before anyone had planted a single seed of wheat, hunter-gatherers carved 20-ton pillars, decorated them with monsters, arranged them in rings, and then buried the whole thing under a mountain of earth. We don't know why they built it. We don't know why they buried it. And we have only dug up 5%. The story starts the way these stories always start. Not with a scholar. With a shepherd. In the late 1980s, a Kurdish shepherd was walking his flock across a low, dry hill near the city of Şanlıurfa, in southeastern Turkey. The locals called the place Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, because of its rounded shape. To the eye, it was nothing. Stones in the dirt. The kind of hill you pass and forget. Then his foot caught on something. He bent down. Brushed away the dust. And found the curved edge of a carved limestone block, half buried in the soil. He told the local museum. The museum filed a report. The report sat in a drawer for years. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt read that report. Schmidt had spent his career digging through the Neolithic, the Stone Age moment when human beings stopped wandering and started farming. He had a hunch about this hill. So he drove out, climbed up, and walked the surface himself. What he saw took him about 40 minutes to understand. The rocks sticking out of the hilltop weren't rocks. They were the tips of enormous T-shaped pillars. Carved. Shaped. Standing upright. And there were dozens of them, arranged in circles, going deep into the earth. Schmidt said later, I had two choices. I could walk away. Or I could spend the rest of my life on this hill, He chose the hill. He never left. What Schmidt and his team began pulling out of that hill rewrote the human story. Picture this. A pillar of pale limestone, taller than a giraffe, 5.5 meters from base to crown. Shaped like a capital T, with a flat horizontal head sitting on a slender vertical body. It weighs 20 tons. 20,000 kilograms. The mass of 3 African elephants standing on a single block. Now picture 12 of them. Arranged in a perfect circle. Standing shoulder to shoulder, with 2 larger pillars at the center, facing each other like priests. That is one enclosure. Schmidt found 4 of them in his lifetime. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there may be 20 more, still hidden under the hill. And the pillars are carved. Look closely, and the stone comes alive. Foxes leap across the pillar faces, mouths open, teeth bared. Vultures spread their wings, gripping severed human heads in their talons. Scorpions raise their tails. Snakes coil down the columns in tight, dense rows. Wild boars charge. Cranes stalk. A leopard crouches. The animals are not gentle. They are predators. Scavengers. Stingers. Things that bite. Things that eat the dead. And on some pillars, faintly, there are human shapes. Headless. Arms folded. A belt. Hands clasped at the waist. Many archaeologists now believe the T-pillars themselves are stylized human figures, gods, ancestors, spirits, watching the ceremonies that happened between them. Whoever carved these had no metal. No iron, no bronze, no copper. They worked the limestone with stone tools, flint, obsidian, antler. By hand. For weeks at a time. Probably for years. And they did it before anyone on Earth had figured out how to plant a field of wheat. This is the part of the story that broke archaeology. For 100 years, the standard textbook said it like this. First, people learned to farm. Then they settled down. Then they had food surpluses. Then they had time. Then, only then, they built temples and gods and civilization. Agriculture came first. Religion came after. Göbekli Tepe ran that timeline in reverse. The radiocarbon dates are not subtle. The oldest layers of the site go back to roughly 9,500 BCE. 11,500 years ago. 6,500 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. 6,000 years before the standing stones of Stonehenge. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were closer in time to the last ice age than they were to the pharaohs. And in 9500 BCE, no one on this planet farmed. There were no fields. No villages in any real sense. No domesticated sheep, no goats, no cattle, no dogs as livestock. No clay pots, pottery hadn't been invented yet. No woven cloth. No metal of any kind. Humans lived in small bands, walking long circuits across the landscape, hunting gazelle and wild boar, gathering wild grains and nuts. These were the people who built Göbekli Tepe. Think about what that means. To quarry a 20-ton limestone pillar out of the bedrock with stone tools. To shape it. To carve a vulture into it. To drag it, without wheels, without draft animals, across rocky ground, up the slope of a hill, and stand it upright in a precisely arranged ring. You don't do that with 20 people. You need hundreds. Maybe thousands. Working in shifts. 4 months. Eating somehow. Sleeping somewhere. Coordinated by something, a chief, a priesthood, a story so powerful that strangers from different valleys agreed to spend their lives moving rocks. And they were doing this before they knew how to farm. That single fact has forced archaeology to reconsider the deepest question in our species' history. Not how we became civilized. But why? And then, around 8000 BCE, 1500 years after they built it, they buried it. This is the part no one can explain. Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned. It was not lost. It was not forgotten in a sandstorm or swallowed by a flood. The site was deliberately, carefully, systematically buried, by the same culture that built it. You can see it in the soil. The fill on top of the enclosures isn't natural sediment. It's a precise mixture of crushed limestone, animal bones, flint chips, and broken tool fragments, debris from feasting and ritual, packed in by human hands. The pillars were not knocked over. They were lowered, sometimes even propped, then covered. Buried while still standing. It took years. Maybe decades. A community decision, executed slowly. Why? We don't know. We have theories. Some archaeologists think it was a ritual closing. The site had completed its purpose, and the only respectful way to retire it was to put it back under the earth, like sealing a tomb. Others think it was generational. Each new ring of pillars was raised over an older, buried ring, like rooms added to a house, and the older space was reverently entombed before the new one rose. Some think there was a crisis. A change in climate. A change in belief. A new god replacing the old. A trauma so deep the only response was to put the past under a hill and walk away. And some, quieter voices in the field, think the builders may have understood something about what they had made that we still don't. That the site was powerful. That it needed to be sealed. Whatever the reason, by 800 BCE the work was done. The rings of pillars lay under tons of soil. The grass grew back. The hill became, again, a hill. And for 10,000 years, nobody knew. So what does Göbekli Tepe mean? The old story said, people farmed, then they built temples. Göbekli Tepe whispers a different story. People built a temple. And then, slowly, they had to invent farming to feed everyone who came. It is not a wild theory. The world's earliest known domesticated wheat, einkorn, was genetically traced to Karacha Dag, a mountain range you can see from the top of Göbekli Tepe. 20 miles away. Within walking distance. Within sight. Think about what that means. The same region. The same era. The same people. A monumental gathering place, and a few generations later, the first cultivated wheat in human history. The question that haunts archaeology now is the order of events. Did belief build the city? Did gods invent agriculture? Did the urge to feed a crowd of pilgrims, year after year, force a hunter-gatherer people to bend their wild grains into the first farms? We can't prove it yet. But the geography is not a coincidence. And Göbekli Tepe is not alone. In the last decade, Turkish archaeologists have found at least a dozen sister sites scattered across the same region, the Taz Tepler, the Stone Hills. Karahan Tepe, where rows of stone phalluses rise from a carved bedrock floor. Sayburk, where a relief shows a man gripping his own genitals while flanked by leopards. Sites with carvings, with pillars, with chambers cut into living rock. All of them roughly contemporary. All of them telling the same impossible story. This was not a one-off. This was a culture. A network. A people who, 11,000 years ago, built a sacred landscape across what is now southeastern Turkey, and then disappeared back into the deep prehistoric quiet, leaving us only their stones. And here is the part that should keep you awake. Of Göbekli Tepe itself, we have excavated about 5%. 95% of the hill is still there. Untouched. 20 more enclosures, by current estimates, still buried in the soil. New pillars. New carvings. New rooms. New answers, and almost certainly new questions we don't yet know how to ask. Klaus Schmidt died in 2014. He didn't live to see the hill finished. Neither will we. The work will take generations. It will outlast the people doing it, the same way the site outlasted the people who buried it. 11,000 years ago, on a hilltop in Turkey, people who had never seen a wheel, never read a word, never tasted bread, built a temple. And then, when they were done with it, they returned it to the earth. We are the first generation in 100 centuries to see it again. And we are still, very slowly, learning how to read what they left behind. If this changed how you see the human story, subscribe. We dig up a lost world every week.